Imagine looking at your family, your hometown, and, well, everything you hold dear, right?
Right.
And deciding that in order to reach this ultimate cosmic peace, you actually have to view human affection as foul and stinking.
It is a completely jarring thought.
It really is. I mean, usually when you or I talk about making a major life transition, we think about highly tangible, practical
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
You pack up boxes, you sign a new lease, or maybe you just update your resume.
Right, the normal stuff.
But what if the transition you're trying to make isn't about moving to a new city? What if you are attempting to migrate to an entirely different dimension of existence?
That is quite the leap.
It is. And today we are taking a deep dive into a profoundly esoteric text that acts as a highly specific blueprint for exactly that kind of radical life transition.
We are looking at a document that was translated back in 2014, and it's authored by Sofang.
Right.
It is titled Chanyuan Celestial's Departure Speech for the Second Stage of Lifechanyuan.
The mission for our deep dive today is to unpack the absolute extremes of the worldview presented in this text.
And it definitely goes to extremes.
Oh, for sure. We are exploring a journey that begins with violently shedding earthly attachments and ends with entering a state of high spiritual consciousness.
Yeah, it's essentially a roadmap for completely leaving the secular world behind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But before we get into the actual mechanics of how this author proposes doing that, we really need to establish a very clear baseline for you, the listener.
That's a good point. We need to frame how we're going to navigate this material.
Right, because it gets pretty intense.
It does. This text contains intense spiritual, metaphysical, and philosophical claims. It outlines a theology that demands a total restructuring of how a person views reality.
A complete overhaul.
Precisely. So our role here is strictly analytical. We're not taking sides, we're not endorsing the theology, and we're certainly not validating this worldview as, objective truth.
We're just looking at what's on the page.
Right. We are going to impartially examine these ideas exactly as they are presented in the source material.
To trying to figure out how it all works.
Exactly. The goal is to understand the author's fascinating perspective, the internal logic of this specific framework, and really the psychological mechanisms required to undergo such a massive paradigm shift.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand where the speaker this text is trying to go, we first have to understand how they process their past.
You can't really move forward otherwise.
Right, because you cannot launch yourself into a higher dimension of reality if you are dragging like a mountain of emotional baggage behind you.
No, the physics of that just don't work, metaphorically speaking.
Exactly. So the text begins with this profound, almost aggressive clearing of the slate. The speaker actually declares their heart is pure and serene, without resentment or hatred.
And the author goes far beyond simply deciding to, forgive and forget.
It's way deeper than that.
It really is. The text explicitly states that every single difficulty the speaker has encountered in their life is simply karmic retribution.
Just paying off a tab.
Right, they call it the arrangement of the Tao. They are essentially saying they have repaid all debts to all beings and are now starting from scratch, completely without any regrets.
Think about what that actually means in practice, though. It's like filing for ultimate spiritual bankruptcy, or, I don't know, finally zeroing out a massive cosmic credit score.
That's a really good way to put it.
Thanks. Because if you spend your whole life feeling like the universe owes you something, because you were wronged, you are constantly paying emotional interest on that debt.
Oh, absolutely. It drains you.
Right. And this author is saying the ledger is completely balanced. Every penny is paid. But I do have to push back a little on the application of this.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, if you view every single difficulty, every profound pain, or every massive unfairness you've ever experienced strictly as a predetermined arrangement of the Tao, does that actually liberate you?
That is the big question.
Right. Or does it risk passive resignation? Because it sounds dangerously close to just giving up and saying, well, the universe just wanted me to suffer.
What's fascinating here is the psychological utility of that exact mindset.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, within the framework of this text, it is not passive resignation at all. It is a highly active claiming of freedom.
Active claiming. Okay, explain that.
Look at the specific language the speaker uses. They say they accept these difficulties gladly.
Gladly.
Yes, gladly. And they describe their spirit in this state as clear and bright.
Gladly is definitely an active word. You don't gladly sit around feeling sorry for yourself.
Exactly. When you view hardship as senseless chaos, it naturally breeds resentment. And resentment requires an object.
Like you have to be mad at somebody.
Right. You are mad at someone or at the world.
Yeah.
That anger is a highly dense emotional tether. It ties you down.
So by saying it's all just math, basically they cut the tether.
Oh, pretty much. By reframing every hardship as a mechanistic clearing of debts, the speaker systematically removes the emotional weight of victimhood. The mechanism here is brilliant in its efficiency.
It really is. Like if your boss fires you unfairly and you view it as a personal attack, you carry that anger for years.
You'd seethe over it forever.
But if you view it as a cosmic transaction where you just paid off an ancient debt, you can just walk away whistling.
Exactly. This mindset creates the absolute pristine psychological runway needed for their departure.
Okay, that makes the transition to the next part of the text much more logical. You have to achieve that internal zero-gravity state first.
You have to clear the launch pad.
Right. But once that internal karmic ledger is balanced, the author turns their attention outward. And this is where the philosophy becomes incredibly severe.
It really does escalate quickly.
To step into this new stage of existence, the speaker determines they must aggressively sever all ties to their current external reality.
The text moves from internal peace to external severance with just uncompromising speed.
No hesitation at all.
None. The speaker explicitly details parting from their hometown and their loved ones. They assert that descending into the mortal world in the first place was not their own choice.
Right, they call it a decree of the heavenly Tao.
Yes, they frame it as a duty they were forced to fulfill.
Which sort of implies they view themselves as a cosmic hostage who has finally served their sentence.
That's a great analogy.
They identify as originally a celestial being and Buddha, untainted by worldly emotions.
So naturally, things like fame and fortune are dismissed as being like dust.
Which, that part is pretty standard for esoteric texts, letting go of money and fame, sure. But the line that stopped me cold was their description of worldly love.
Oh, the phrasing there is intense.
It really is. They don't just say they are leaving their family behind. The text explicitly calls worldly love foul and stinking.
It is an incredibly visceral, almost shocking description of human affection.
It feels like a massive emotional paradox to me.
Yeah.
On one hand, the speaker says, "May my loved ones not be troubled by me."
Which feels almost gentle.
Right. It's a wish for peace. But then, in the exact same breath, they are dropping this devastating goodbye, referring to the very concept of human love as a foul odor.
It is definitely jarring.
Why use such violent language to describe something most people consider the best part of being alive?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the author's cosmology, we have to look at the mechanism of the human ego.
Okay, the ego.
The speaker operates from a fundamental premise stated clearly in the text: I am originally selfless.
All right, no ego at all.
Exactly. In this theology, the ego, the self, is an artificial construct of the mortal world. Now think about how human love functions.
Okay.
To love someone, there must be an I who loves and a them who is loved.
Right, you need two people.
Exactly. Love requires separation. It requires a subject and an object.
So by its very nature, interpersonal love keeps the ego alive.
Yes. Human attachments, even the beautiful ones, are dense earthly anchors. If your ultimate goal is ascension to a state that is entirely untainted by worldly emotions, then the bonds of human love are not just distractions.
They're obstacles.
They are the strongest chains holding you down. They reinforce the illusion of the self.
That perfectly explains the foul and stinking phrasing.
Yeah.
It is a deliberate psychological technique.
How do you mean?
Well, if you are trying to break an intense sugar addiction, you don't lovingly gaze at a piece of cake.
Right? You'd cave instantly.
Exactly. You tell yourself it is just a lump of toxic chemicals and grease. The author is doing that here. They're stripping away all the poetry, romance, and sentimentality from human connection.
That makes a lot of sense.
We do this in modern life all the time with smaller things. Like we might realize our obsession with social media clout is ruining our mental health.
Oh, absolutely.
So we have to mentally rebrand getting likes as seeking empty dopamine. The author is just doing that, but with all human interaction.
They're neutralizing the gravitational pull of the secular world. The harsh language is a decisive scalpel cutting away the ego.
So it's not malicious.
No, it isn't necessarily about feeling hatred toward their family. It is about recognizing that the emotional tether itself is fundamentally incompatible with absolute celestial peace.
So the internal slate is wiped clean of resentment, and the external tethers to the physical world, including love, status, and hometown, have been aggressively severed.
A total clean break.
Yes. The speaker has completely abandoned what they refer to as the hustle and bustle. And now the text pivots to reveal the mechanics of the new reality they are entering.
And this is a major shift in the text.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the author actually lays out the architectural rules of this new universe.
The imagery suddenly becomes highly mystical. The speaker says, spreading a palmful of sand, green trees emerge.
And right after that visual, they deliver what feels like the central metaphysical thesis of the entire document.
The core rule, essentially.
Right. The text states, holograph gives birth to the heart, and mysteries abound. That it drops this heavy line. Consciousness precedes, structures emerge, and energy follows, marvels appear.
It's a very specific sequence.
It is. And when I first read that, my mind instantly went to modern technology. This ancient-sounding mysticism is actually describing the exact architecture of a video game engine or virtual reality simulation.
Walk us through the mechanics of that analogy. How does a video game engine explain consciousness precedes structure?
Well, in our physical day-to-day lives, we assume matter comes first.
Right. The physical world is just there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a solid brick wall, and then my consciousness precedes the brick wall. Matter precedes consciousness.
Makes sense.
But think about how a virtual world is built.
Yeah.
In a VR simulation, the very first thing that exists is the code, right? The pure intention of the programmer.
Ah, I see.
That's consciousness precedes. Because of that code, the game engine generates a wireframe, the sort of invisible geometry of the digital world.
And that perfectly matches the text's phrase, structures emerge.
Yes. Finally, the engine applies rendering and physics to that wireframe. Lighting, gravity, the sound of wind. That is energy follows.
Which brings the world to life.
Exactly. And the result? The player can explore a magical world where marvels appear.
That is an excellent framework, and it perfectly explains the text's use of the word holograph.
Right, because a holograph isn't really there.
Exactly. A holograph is a three-dimensional image formed by the interference of light beams. It has no actual physical mass, yet it appears entirely real to the observer.
So it's an illusion with rules.
Yes. The author is asserting that the universe itself operates strictly on this holographic principle. What we perceive as a solid, immovable reality is actually downstream from our own consciousness.
Which completely inverts how the average person lives.
How do you mean?
Well, we usually let the structure dictate our consciousness. Like, I have a massive project due at work, so I am stressed.
Yeah.
The structure of my day created my internal state of mind.
Right. We are reacting to the world.
But this text argues the exact opposite. Your internal state of mind actually generates the external structure of your reality.
Notice the profound shift in the speaker's agency here, too.
Yeah, they're in control now.
In the first segment, they were bound by karmic retribution. They were subject to the arrangement of the Tao, kind of passively paying off debts.
Right.
But now, having cleared those debts and severed their earthly ties, they have hacked the system. By mastering consciousness, they are no longer experiencing reality. They are actively compiling it.
That's a great word for it. Compiling.
The text literally states that by reaching the heavens and the earth, the games are endless.
The games are endless. That implies such a profound sense of play, you know? It is a total departure from the heavy, punishing language of karmic ledgers we saw earlier.
It's much lighter.
Yeah. Existence is no longer a test to endure. It is an infinitely malleable playground. So the rules are established. Consciousness writes the code, structure emerges, energy brings it to life.
The blueprint is set.
Knowing how this reality functions, we finally look at where this departure is actually leading the speaker. Where is the destination?
The text outlines a destination that synthesizes the incredibly mundane with the staggeringly cosmic.
Yeah, it's a weird mix.
It is. On one hand, the speaker emphasizes simple, highly grounded actions. They say, planting grass and trees is my nature.
Right.
And they speak of a garden of the soul where weeds have been removed and mountain flowers are allowed to bloom.
Right. They refer to themselves as a rare flower of the heavenly kingdom blooming gracefully amidst a frozen land.
It's very poetic, grounded imagery.
But then, interspersed with this imagery of doing basic yard work, the text starts referencing ultimate metaphysical destinations.
It scales way up.
It does. It talks about the fairy world. It mentions ascending to the Buddha's Pure Land, reaching the fourth level of meditation, and arriving at the Celestial Islands.
Those are massive concepts.
So what does this all mean? Let's clarify these terms for anyone who isn't a theologian.
It is essential to define these to understand the author's endgame. Let's start with the Buddha's Pure Land.
Okay.
In many traditions, the Pure Land is not just heaven. It is a specific celestial realm created by a Buddha that is entirely free from suffering.
So it's an optimized environment.
Exactly, designed specifically to make ultimate enlightenment easy to achieve. Then you have the fourth level of meditation, often referred to in Buddhist texts as the fourth jhana.
And that's not just sitting quietly, right?
No, it is a profound state of absolute equanimity. There is no pleasure, there is no pain. It is a state of pure, undisturbed mindfulness and radiant stillness.
So these are towering, abstract concepts representing the absolute pinnacle of spiritual achievement.
The very top of the mountain.
Which brings me to my major question. Why does a text focused on reaching the Pure Land and the fourth level of meditation place such a heavy emphasis on planting grass and trees?
It does seem disconnected at first glance.
It feels like a contradiction.
Yeah.
You are ascending to a holographic celestial dimension, but your primary activity is pulling weeds.
This raises an important question about how this philosophy defines ultimate spiritual success.
Okay, let's hear it.
We tend to conceptualize enlightenment as an escape, like floating away on a cloud, entirely detached from physical action.
It's just totally checked out.
Right, but the author is proposing a complete synthesis of the mundane and the divine. The Garden of the Soul acts as both a literal environment they intend to inhabit and a perfect metaphor for their internal purity.
Oh, I see. If consciousness precedes structure, as we established earlier,
Yes.
then a perfectly pure, weed-free mind will naturally generate a structure of perfect, harmonious nature. The inside flawlessly projects the outside.
Exactly. True ascension, according to this text, is an integrated state of being where everyday actions are perfectly aligned with the Tao.
So there's no conflict.
None. When you are originally selfless, when the ego is completely dissolved, there is absolutely no friction. Therefore, there is no separation between the act of planting a tree and the experience of the Buddhist Pure Land.
Wow.
The mundane act becomes the very expression of divine consciousness.
Because the weeds, which represent worldly desires, the hunger for fame, the need for human validation, they've all been pulled.
Your bond.
What remains is a state where the speaker can bloom gracefully, even if the mortal world around them is a frozen land.
Because they aren't bound by it anymore.
Right. The external environment, no matter how chaotic or harsh it might seem to a regular person, it no longer dictates their internal reality. They carry the celestial islands within their own consciousness, projecting it outward through simple, perfectly aligned actions.
It is a comprehensive architectural blueprint for a total paradigm shift. They have rewritten their foundational code.
It has been a truly fascinating journey through this document today.
It really has.
Just to briefly trace the path we walked, we started with the absolute necessity of clearing karmic debts and neutralizing past resentment to create a blank slate.
Setting up that zero-gravity environment.
Right. From there, we examined the harsh, almost violent severance from the secular world, specifically how the ego uses human love as an anchor.
The whole foul and stinking concept.
Exactly. We then uncovered the code of this universe, the concept that reality is a holograph where our consciousness dictates physical structure and energy.
The VR engine of reality.
Yes. And finally, we arrived at the destination. A celestial garden, where the highest imaginable states of meditation are realized through the simple, harmonious act of planting trees.
The internal logic of the journey is remarkably consistent from start to finish.
It really is. And I want to connect this back to you, the listener. You are probably not abandoning your hometown for the Celestial Islands today.
Probably not today.
And you likely aren't going to look at your family tonight and tell them that worldly love is foul and stinking.
I wouldn't recommend it.
No, definitely not. But, stripped of its extreme theology, this text offers a profound reflection for our modern lives. It forces us to ask what it actually looks like to stop paying emotional interest on past resentments.
It's a great mental exercise.
It challenges us to identify the weeds of status and validation in our own mental gardens. And most importantly, it poses the radical idea that shifting our internal consciousness might just change the tangible structure of our daily realities.
That is a crucial thread to pull on as we wrap up.
Yeah, go ahead.
This entire philosophy hinges on the law that consciousness precedes structure. But look at the modern listener's life. We live in a society governed by incredibly rigid, unyielding structures.
Like hyper-scheduled calendars.
Exactly. Calendars, algorithmic social feeds, corporate ladders, and constant digital notifications. We are forced to fit our minds into these pre-existing boxes.
The structure dictates our consciousness.
Right. If the fundamental truth of the universe is that our consciousness is supposed to generate our reality, We have to ask ourselves a difficult question.
What's that?
Do the rigid structures of our modern lives actively limit the energy and the marvels we are capable of experiencing? What actually happens to human potential when societal structures are constantly forced upon our consciousness rather than our consciousness dictating our structures?
That is a heavy, essential question to carry with you. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep tending to your garden, whatever that looks like for you.